So just a couple of introductions then. So as I mentioned, there's myself, Wayne Goss and Dean Woodham. We're both a part of the FA affiliate tutor team in the Oxfordshire FA, along with Kev Lloyd, Martin Wilkinson, and Mark Haining, who was the county coach developer. And obviously myself and Dean have stepped forward to do tonight's presentation. We've also got James Shipley from the Oxfordshire FA on. He's the Senior Football Development Officer. And we've got Ben, who's also from the Oxfordshire FA, and he's one of the development assistants. And I think he's pressing the button when I shout, next slide, please. So no pressure, Ben. You've got to get this right. OK, good stuff. Should we move on? OK, so if you haven't already, if you do get the chance, and if you don't, it's not a major problem. If you've got another device that you can put your hands on, so not the device that you're watching the webinar on, if you could grab a phone or another tablet or something, if you've got Kahoot, you'll see that there at the bottom of the screen. If you can download that onto your devices over the next 45 minutes, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to try and have a little bit of an interactive quiz. So if you've got the chance, just go into your app store, find Kahoot. It's a little quiz app, and all you need to do is get that onto your device over the next 45 minutes. So if you haven't started doing that, if you want to make a start on that now, and then we hopefully we'll be set to go. OK, next slide, please. So James, shall I hand over to you now to talk about some of the safeguarding considerations?
Yeah, so as with everything, obviously we need to make sure that safeguarding is, across everything that we do. So anything that you do look to do online with your players during lockdown or beyond that, you need to make sure that you've got parental consent for them to take part in the session. Good practice is to get the parents just to pop their head in and say hi at the start of the session. Ideally, they should be recommended to stay, but as long as they can pop their head in, say hi, then you know that they know what's going on. Always seek permission if using cameras and video. We would advise that you don't use camera unless it's vital, but if you do, make sure that you've got that permission. And wear club coach attire where possible. So just to make sure that you look like you would do in a training session, just try and wear your club kit. Don't record the session, that's pretty much as is. And no screenshots to be taken either. And be aware of what's in the background of your screen, just be aware of your surroundings. And then be aware of the language and terminology that you're using. You'll do that anyway when you're on the field, but just try and be aware of it when you're behind the screen as well. And then if you do need anything else or have any questions, then there's a contact there, safeguarding@oxfordshiref.com. That'll come through to one of the team, and somebody will get back to you on that.
Cheers, James. Thanks for that. Obviously, safeguarding is at the heart of all we do, so it's really important just to kind of bear that in mind and make sure that's front and centre of what we're doing. So let's kick off then. If you want to flick forward a couple, Ben, just so we can see the model. Awesome, thanks, mate. I'm sure loads of you, if not all of you, are familiar with the four-corner model. Essentially just looking at football as a holistic process rather than just looking at, I think, potentially when I first did my level 2 back in the day with Vinny's on the call, it was very much around that tech-tac, and we spent a good couple of weeks pretty much focusing completely in that corner at that time. And it's really nice that kind of things have moved on and evolved, and now with the England DNA in place, it's really about holistic development of young people. And for Wayne and I, tonight's all about, if we look at the pandemic through the eyes of a young person, particularly a young person, and look at it through these four lenses of the FA development model here, that hopefully will give us a little bit of a perspective about potentially what the young people are going through, or adults, if you're in an adult game, what the adults are going through. Just knock it on one more, Ben, for us. Keep going till you get the four corners up. Awesome. Now, in normal times, if on a normal Wednesday night, I'm sure loads of you will be on the grass on an Astro somewhere under floodlights, working on these things with your players, and that's what we want to all be doing again, hopefully very, very soon. Clearly, at the moment, we can't do that, or certainly we can't do it in the traditional way, the way we normally would do. So for us, the next kind of 50 minutes or so, we want to just have a think about what can we do, how can we support our players across all 4 of these corners. And I think when I first discussed this, we kind of feel that there's probably quite a lot out there in the physical corner and probably technical corner, but perhaps not so much in the social and psych corner. So we're looking to explore those this evening as well. And if we can, try and find some solution and give you some ideas. And hopefully, if you leave here in an hour's time with a few golden nuggets that you can take away and use your players, then we're absolutely winning. That's what we're after this evening. Ben, do you want to move on one more, which leads us into the very first breakout round. Hopefully, James, you've got this ready to go in the background. Well, that's the golden thing that hopefully makes this work in a minute. What we're after you doing, first of all, is just have a think about what's been happening to your players through the current lockdown and potentially through the pandemic more generally in the last year or so. It's been such a bumpy, rocky year. Just think about what the impact's been on your players. Now, when you're placed in a breakout room, it'll be named. So it'll be named just one of the corners. So we want your conversation to focus around just that corner. So if you're in the physical corner group, please just think about how your players may have been impacted in that physical corner. First breakout room is only about 5 minutes, so just a chance to have a quick chat, get to know who's in your room, and just share some thoughts around how players may have been impacted, probably negatively, but you never know. There could be some positives in there as well. So please look at the positive side of things as well, and just have a share and a discussion around what you think's been happening. So if you want to think about the last month in this lockdown, or more broadly, what's been happening with your players, but really look at the lens of your corner. So that's the really important thing. And then please nominate one brave soul who's happy to give some feedback. And once we come back out into the main room, we'll need someone to give some feedback for your group.
Okay, so what we've obviously just done is we've just broken out to kind of talk about the impacts and what the current impacts are across the 4 corners in our room. So hopefully you got the opportunity to discuss a couple of the things, whether that be positive or negative in terms of the impacts. And it'll be just good now to get an idea of what those impacts are. So I just dropped into the psychological room and Peter, I think it was Peter, was in full flow at the time as James unscrupulously dragged him out of the room. So the guys in the psychological corner, do you want to have a go and feed some of the impacts back that you discussed?
Yeah, I'm happy enough to start off on that. So one of the things we spoke about was just the general lack of information that the players have got about what's happening with football at the minute. So maybe a lot of what's being fed to them is based on rumours amongst friends, rather than a player-friendly path back into football and beyond. Similarly, there was a lot around, well, different players can adapt and cope better than others, and we are concerned about how those players then get back into the game and pick up where they left off or not too far behind. So the ones that are struggling a little bit don't just miss out on not only the 3 months that we're not playing, but everything that went before that.
Okay. And Darren, I know Darren, you were in the room as well. Was there any kind of particular things that you've seen from your players in terms of the impacts, whether it was positive or negative?
Yeah, you mean me, don't you? Just checking. I think I was saying, I think on the first lockdown, it took quite a while, I think, for the kids to get back engaged. We're under 9s, and actually some of the kids that are gifted at football, it still took them a while to get back into kind of like, the thrust and the desire and want to play football. So there's this kind of slightly insular, slightly don't have to do anything, may not do anything kind of attitude, whereas they've been used to running at 100 miles an hour between school, getting to clubs, doing this, that and the other. So it's a general kind of feeling of kind of probably energy and potential lethargy, I guess. I think we talked about confidence as well in our group, didn't we? That some of the kids, again, perhaps not necessarily the gifted ones, but this feeling that you've had to leave football behind. Because as Michael was saying there, I think the kids' coping strategy, so a lot of kids will just be they've had to forget about football because you can't sit there wanting to play it all day because you can't. So you kind of get on with it, and that again might be a lack of interest generally. Could end up in losing players in this process, couldn't you, and not really going back in. I think that's interesting. And I think just this social interaction, I think that was the other big thing we talked about, is that team. They're not doing anything in a concept of team at the moment, are they? It's all kind of isolated on their own. And I think we talked about, I suppose I talked about no different than academically, really, that some kids get left behind because no one at home supporting them, helping them, pushing them. But some kids are probably having a decent time of it and doing quite a lot, actually, you know, the opportunity side of it. But it's really hard when the kids come back. You know, it'd be interesting to see, you know, how far some kids have been left behind by that process, really.
Now, two great points from both yourself, Darren, and Michael. And I think what that's kind of brought to life for me, just listening to you two guys there, is that when we talked on the courses and we speak on the courses about the four corners being interlinked and looking at that holistic view of a player, they're probably now closer together and more linked than they've ever been. Because, you know, you touched on the social side and certainly in terms of the other impacts as well. So, you know, especially the social side of things. Anything else from anybody else? So just kind of throwing it open to anyone outside the psychological rooms in terms of impact. Was there anything else that anyone's got or they've thought about or they've noticed over the last few weeks and months? Okay.
Sorry, Wayne. I was waiting for someone else to talk. I just thought we were in the social room, and I'll come on to that in a second. But one of the things we talked about as well with children who don't have a brother or sister, who are literally on their own, and their mums and dads might be at work. They might not have time to even think football, talk football, you know, all that sort of stuff. I've certainly seen it in the two teams I run. The ones who are only children are less engaged now than ever before, and obviously that famous four-letter word Xbox doesn't help that situation as well.
Yeah, no, spot on, and I think a lot of parents on the call probably agree with that as well. Yeah, no, fair point, Wayne. So I think what we'll do is we're going to look at strategies for how we can kind of improve these corners and how we can support the players when we go into the next set of breakout rooms. What I'm going to do now on purpose is move to the physical corner, because I want to try and break the psychological and social rooms up a bit because they are very close together. So we'll come back to that. So physical room, who was in there? Who wants to go and talk about the impacts there?
Yeah, hello, Stuart Simpson.
Hi, Stuart.
I was in a physical room with a few of the guys. We were talking about like how the physical side can affect per age group, because it's easier for a grown-up to go out and pound a pavement or ride on a bike or you know, said standard exercises, because they understand what physical exercise means. But to incorporate this into children, where your normal session involves ABCs, etc., it's extremely difficult, because I can go online and face to face with my team and say, right, off you go, run around your garden 10 times. What's that going to do? You know, hop on your bike, do what you can. What's that going to do? And we also talked about, is the time of the year as well. There's lockdown 1.0, but the days were getting longer. At the moment, the days are quite limited. Like, some of us still working as volunteer coaches. You get home, it's dark. Do you want to go and tell your kids to go out and run the streets? Do you want to go and tell your kids to run in the garden? You know, so we were saying that the physical corner, albeit it seems quite easy to tell people what to do because we want to know a little bit of something physically, it's actually rather quite difficult to deliver over a computer. Unless, of course, I dropped a little comment in the comment box as well, where I talked about motivation. I'm not motivated when I get home from work. My children are online learning. Some children are coming in from school. Are they going to be motivated this time of year? And go back to the psychological, that's where it links in with that, the motivation, because I think they will struggle being online or doing their stuff as well, then to go out. I've got 2 boys. I said to them tonight, boys, come on, let's go out. Let's greet you with, oh, Dad, not tonight, let's do it tomorrow. You know, it is cold, I don't blame them, to be honest with you, but yeah, we discussed, well, yeah, we discussed a little bit about how difficult, it seems easy on the face of things, but how difficult it probably actually is, and hence why I'm certainly here tonight on this, how to deliver 4 corners. Yeah, right, I'll go silent.
Yeah, I'll happily comment as well. I was in the same room on the physical side, and I think yeah, some great points there, but Stuart made it, and I think what we also talked about, it's just that variety, I think, of things that you're able to do, and you know, I mean, I coach an adult team, and you might do circuits or strength session or whatever, but I think it's that important to have that variety, and I mean, it could be an opportunity to engage the kids in trying to do some, I don't know, into trying to think of a solution to maybe get them to try and plan some of the stuff themselves, you know, and try and just, I don't know, give them a bit more ownership of what they might do. I know they've got lots of things going on right now with all of their work at home, but yeah, just that variety, I think, is just an extra point that we made.
Okay, no, yeah, good, yeah, fair point, Colin. Anybody else got anything from what they've seen? And again, I'm throwing this open to people outside of that physical room now, just in terms of the physical impacts. Any other thoughts or observations that you've seen with your players, or it might be your own, you know, your own children?
I've seen quite a bit. I have a under 14 lads team, and I've seen it's quite a lot down to the parents. In fact, some parents are really motivated to get their kids out doing things, and like with my son, I get him off the Xbox, out running with me, or on the bike with me, or kicking a ball about. I don't know, some of the other parents are not motivated, not very sporty, and so consequently their children, you know, my players in the team, are not getting out doing much at all. And I think the parents have quite a key role in some of this.
Yeah, so I think there's quite a lot of stuff that's starting to kind of form out of these conversations in terms of it's the opportunities. So what opportunities have have children got? They might be living in a house with a decent back garden. They could be living on the 5th floor of a set of flats. It depends on the support network as well. So I think it's clear that support network's going to impact that motivation. So we're now back into the psychological corner again. So yeah, there's going to be a number of factors that are going to impact this. And again, some parents will be very supportive and be quite proactive. There'll be other parents that could be single parent families, could be working all hours. So that's obviously going to have a big impact. So definitely some challenges out there. We'll move on to the technical corner next. So technical and tactical corner. Who do we have in there?
Adam here. We spoke about a few different varieties of things, really. We basically said it's down to individual circumstances. You have so many kids these days who, as families are growing and they're buying property, the properties are getting smaller and smaller and smaller and have smaller back gardens. I'm from Liverpool, where we were very lucky. We had a nice big back garden, so I could play football. If we had a pandemic, then I could have played football all day long. But you're not going to have that now. So that personal space and your personal circumstances are a key factor. The conditioning from like the first lockdown, when all the kids came back, we had one kid who was a stone heavier, and he'd lost his touch, he'd lost his timing. So when he was running, he couldn't run as well. And that was a key factor. With all the schoolwork they've got to do, with all the stuff they've got to do with the parents, the time that they actually have. And somebody said earlier about the days are shorter, so there isn't that ability to go out. Even if you could go out somewhere, it's so dark so early that you're not going to have the time to spend working on your on your technical ability. And we said about knowing what to do. Knowing what the best, because our kids are under 8s, and Mike, who's in the room, his kids are under 9. So even if they did, the opportunity to do it, they might not necessarily know what to do. Nothing wrong, obviously, with just kicking the ball around as you're doing it. It's all, good exercise in that respect. But there might be the things that they could do to make to make it more effective for them. And then we said, obviously, the distractions that they're having means that they're not doing it. My son's upstairs currently on Minecraft, so not always easy.
I think there's no game related practice though, is there? I mean that's the thing that really engages them. It's all again isolated learning or skilled on your own, or doing Wally or whatever it might be. But they learn best in that game related practices, don't they? Where they've got an aim, a goal, there's energy. They want to show off. Some of them they want to do well. Some of them, it's all that's not there, is it?
And again, similar challenges to the other two corners. And I think what will be really interesting is when we get to the next breakout section. One thing that is apparent tonight, looking at the attendees, there's an awful lot of experience on here tonight. We've got people from from Oxford United, from grassroots, from so many different areas, and coaches at different levels as well. It'll be really good to kind of understand what strategies are out there and what people have been doing. So kind of look forward to seeing what comes out of that. Right, we'll move on swiftly then to I think we've got the social corner. So do you guys want to give us a bit of your thoughts on that corner and how that's been impacted?
Yeah, I'll do that for the social, Wayne. So we've kind of touched on a few of the things. There's definitely the links in there with the psychological that Dan and Michael had already touched on, and equally that Stuart touched on with lockdown 1 and 2 being very different. And I think it's inevitable. It's obvious that there's been a negative social impact for, I think it's probably fair to say, every child out there, because they're missing their normal life of school work, school life, where they can laugh and run and joke and they can talk in class. But actually now they're not allowed to talk in class unless they're asking a question. So they lose that. They lose that kind of ability for that, really. We've touched on the Xbox and the online stuff. That can sometimes have a positive effect when they can talk to their mates online and actually speak to them still. And I've certainly seen it with my boys, that when they're talking to some of their mates and having a bit of banter and laughing and being stupid, I don't mind them going on that for that reason, so that it keeps them talking to their mates. We sort of looked at the only child bit as well. We looked at that. Vinny was talking about he was doing weekly online calls with the team. But what he and some of the others in the group have also said is you see some of the quieter, shyer kids, they'll come to one and then they don't turn up again. And Vinny's done a great thing with doing some one-to-one stuff, but he said that was quite hard to keep people kind of motivated. But I think ultimately life behaviour is different behind a screen than it is in real life. And I think that's the big social difference that we've kind of, it's so obvious. It's almost the elephant in the room, isn't it? Everybody knows it's going to be different. And I think for all four corners, actually, we've all got to realise that most of them, particularly the kids, the younger kids, will be taking a step back before we go forward again. So I think as coaches, we need to bear that in mind. I know my touch has got a little bit worse over lockdown anyway.
To be fair, Wayne, I saw it a couple of years ago and it weren't great.
No, I know. It wasn't.
No, it's it's a really interesting point, that, Wayne. And yeah, I mean, going back to the Xbox, you're kind of flipping it the other way, and how it can be very supportive. And I like, the idea with how Vinny's kind of dealing with it with a kind of one-to-one stuff, and those attendees is interesting. I've been doing some stuff with the under-13s I coach, and you can almost you can tick off the 8 or 9 that will be on there, and the 4 or 5 that won't. And it'll be good to understand why on a regular basis they don't attend. So there's probably a little bit of work to be done in the future to understand where their thinking was, during this as well. Okay, Dean, I think that we've covered the 4 corners. I think we're kind of ready for task 2 to kind of open this up now and look at some strategies.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There's some really good stuff coming out of there, and I think the individual difference thing is really important, that it's going to affect different people in different ways, and that's the big thing that keeps sort of bouncing through people. It's going to be different experiences for everybody, so that's a really important one, I suppose, to think about. But it was a bit doom and gloom. So let's try and brighten the mood before we leave with a bit of hopefully some solutions. So look, we know there's some problems. We know that that's out there, but with the limitations we've got, it'd be really good back in your room, back focused on your corner. What are the solutions to this? What can be done? So it might be you share some ideas of stuff that you've done yourself. What worked, what didn't work so well, why it worked, why it didn't work. Or is there things you've seen on social media you think, oh, I might give that a go? If you have a conversation, share that in your group. You've seen something online, you thought that might be a nice idea. Just 10 minutes, just have a really good chat around what are the potential solutions that you can put in place to support your players in that particular corner. So it's a real solution focused 10 minutes. Okay, we're going to try and whiz through this bit, but I guess this is hopefully where some of the gold will be around those conversations you've been having in terms of what's been going well, what hasn't been going so well, what have you learned so far with your players. I've had a couple of really nice chats about some good ideas, which hopefully people will be willing to share. Let's start in the tech tac corner. Who was in there and who's going to give some feedback about what they've been doing?
We spoke about a lot of things really. I was explaining about the fact that we set like the boys a challenge to create a goal, and then they record it. These are under eights. Create a goal, record it. The parents will put it onto the WhatsApp group, and the parent and the kid would then challenge another child to do one for the next week. Worked very well in lockdown during the and the kids really enjoyed that. I was saying about the fact that we were looking at. I was trying to give them like training cards that they could use so they could work on their technical side, about, passing or dribbling or beat moves as I called them. 10 so far, and we just wanted to see if those would be something that the kids would enjoy.
I guess the one bonus with the foundation phase players is we do want ball mastery, and for that they just need a ball and a bit of space, and that's what they definitely can be doing. So there's definitely an opportunity with all ages, to be honest. And I did something with my under 16s last week, and a little keep uppy challenge, and the numbers were terrible. So that's definitely something we need to put on our radar. They were useless. Our goalkeeper, would you believe our goalkeeper was the winner? So everyone else hang their heads in shame. Out of the 17 of them, the goalkeeper was the best. Yeah. Interesting actually what you can do just with the ball and a little bit of space in that ball mastery. Anything else from that tech tac point of view? Anyone been doing any sort of analysis of the games, any sort of tactical stuff with their players?
I mentioned, Dean, just that with my lad's a bit older, the under 14s. I've been thinking technical wise, looking at the laws of the game, the FA laws of the game, and each week I've on Zoom I've picked one of the laws and done like a PowerPoint of a quiz, asking them different questions about that law and finding out what their answers are, but just getting them thinking in that sort of context, as well as with their feet, with their mind as well.
Did they know the laws? Do they know them well or not so much?
Well, they know certain, yeah. Most of the main points they know. There's little bits in the laws that are interesting, that just get them thinking a bit more. Yeah. Like last night we were looking at equipment, and just simple things like, is it okay to have your shin pads uncovered? Can you play with your socks down? Is that okay? And just getting them simple things like that, just getting them thinking. But yeah, they seem to enjoy it.
It was nice enough to chat with Peter. You were talking about getting your girls to actually watch some football and then give some feedback. Do you want to share what you found from doing that with your players?
Yeah, so I've been sort of picking a game on a Sunday for the girls to watch some of the women's football playing. And to start with, I just asked them what did they enjoy from it. Kept it very simple, and they gave me a little bit of feedback. One of them gave me, they like how they played out from the back and things like that. And it's just watching a game for them from a different perspective, I'd imagine. They could see the game in different elements, and then we asked about formations, and they actually noticed all these things without sort of real sort of prompting. They could tell me like it's a 4-4-2 and things like that, which I weren't overly expecting to some degree, but they done very well on it. so they could you can use the adult game, which is on the telly at the moment, to sort of help your team. Just pick very small elements of it I've been picking, and let them sort of lead it really.
I guess we've got a lot of time at the moment, and we've got some decent access to football, haven't we, for now? So it's definitely there's some opportunity to do some of those sorts of things, and sort of see what they notice and find out what they see in the games compared to what you see as a coach. Because it'll be different. It's interesting to kind of find that out. Also,
Dean, just on that, just to build on what Peter's just mentioned, that was a great point you made. I think with the under-13s that I've done some sessions with recently, we've set little tasks to watch games, and it's the first time they've really had the opportunity to watch away from the ball. So, up until probably the age of 40, I was just watching what was going on the ball. It's only since I started kind of, developing as a coach that you start to look away and look at different aspects of the game. So what we might be doing is creating a generation of players that will be better at looking away from the ball at what's going on in the game. So I think that could potentially be a real big bonus that comes out of this.
Yeah, I think where you might get some losses, but that's one place you can definitely get some gains, I think, when they come back. So I think you're absolutely right there for sure. Cool, some great ideas there. How about if we move into the physical space? What have people been doing in that physical corner? What's been going well for people? Who's on to talk in the physical corner?
Hi Dean, I might as well kick us off on this, and it's an idea that you and Michael might know a little bit about. So I was giving an example of what's been happening at Mortonville, and I gave the example of the we've had lockdown challenges that have been set in foundation phase and youth phase with 25 different things on each as a kind of, in a way, a bit of a tick box. It covers all 4 areas of the 4 corners model. Looking at physical, for example, we've got things on there. Firstly, this was distributed to managers who have then distributed it to members of their own team. And things on the challenge were things like beat your keepy uppy record, practice your dribbling round objects in the garden or park, go for a walk with your parents, go to the park and practice climbing and jumping. So all sorts of things that were encouraging physical aspects of the 4 corners model for the children. So there we go. That's it there. Thank you for sharing it, Dean.
Well, this is. I'm going to talk about this in a minute. So you're basically massively stealing my thunder. So you must do it now.
Okay. Well, don't ask me to contribute to the group then. You either want me to contribute or you don't. Make up your mind. So Dean will show you some examples of what we were talking about in the physical corner anyway.
There's some ideas there, and I think, Al, you're right. It was our way of trying to support a large number of coaches remotely. So yeah, we came up with a little grid, and I'll talk perhaps a bit more through it in a minute. But there's definitely some physical ones on there.
There are, and it covered all aspects of the 4 corners model, as people will see as you go on later. All right.
Awesome. Cheers, Al. Any other physical from anybody?
Yeah, we talked. I know you're going to talk about it later, but we talked about that particular model, how well you can develop it as well, and how you can numb it down for foundation age, all different ages, and grown-ups, everybody across the board. And even if your team had less ability than other teams, you can make it more social, more psychological, put more factors on those challenges. And if your team were an elite team, you can make it sort of right up there as well. So I'm sure you'll go on to it later with your idea, team, but that's the things we discussed.
Yeah, I mean, for me, for the physical, it was around just particularly in that foundation phase, get them to go to the park, get them to take their scooter out and just go scoot around. It wasn't anything in particularly mind-blowing or technical. Just try and get them outside, go for a walk with your parents, just get them to enjoy the outdoors. It's pretty miserable at the moment, but can we encourage them just to be outside? They're inside so often, for so long at the moment. Can we just get them out, just doing anything that they would be happy with? So anything they can do for me was a bit of a bonus, and particularly in that foundation phase, yeah, go and play in a park, go and climb a wall, go and do some jumping around, because going for a run's one thing, but it's not going to engage many people, and it's not going to hit your ABCs. So what can we do that might tick those boxes? I suppose what we were thinking there. Awesome. I know Wayne in a minute's going to talk through some physical stuff, which is going to be cool. He'll show you some decent content, which will hopefully solve some physical suggestions for people. Let's move across to the social corner. Who was there and what's been happening there? You can't say a Zoom quiz. There's anything you can't talk about. Other than that, you can say whatever you want.
Well, it was going to be me, Dean, but you've just ruined it. That's about a Zoom quiz. I mean, most of it does still revolve around a Zoom quiz from a social aspect, but I think, you know, some of the things that we talked about, certainly Paddy and Vinny did, is how you can relate that back to kind of ownership. So we talked about frequencies of Zooms. You know, a lot of people doing them weekly, have done them weekly, and I think over time have realised maybe weekly is too much. Kids are on Zooms most of the week. Get to a Saturday, probably don't want to do that every week. You know, it's gets a bit repetitive. So frequency, but I think the important thing there that both Paddy and Vinny said is also asking the kids, you know, how frequent do they want to do it, and also what do they want to do. So giving them some of the ownership around it, around what's included. I think Vinny even took it to, you know, a stage further, as he always does, dragging his own kid in to do a presentation, but getting them to also do a presentation and be responsible for actually creating the quiz, which is a great idea. You know, not something that I necessarily thought of. I think it depends on the age group as well. I think his are 13s, mine are under 10s. A couple of them might want to do that, but probably majority wouldn't want to. So I think that is dependent on the age group, but really how you tie that back into the ownership, and then also what to include in those quizzes. You know, sometimes they don't want to talk about football. They want to talk about anything but football, even though they're not playing right now, because we just want to bang on about football all the time. So sometimes trying to drip a bit of both in there. So maybe a little bit of football, maybe a bit on your own philosophies and what your team's trying to do, but then also just general knowledge, you know, get them to create it. So that was really the social side of it.
No, that's awesome, Darren. Andrew, sorry, you've chatted some great stuff there. The co-creation thing I think is really important, and just talk to your players. What do they want? What do they need? What are they after? How can they help? Let's talk to them. Even, you know, my youngest is under 8. He'd tell you what he wants to do, doesn't want to do. So please, yeah, talk to your players. Find out from them what do they need, what do they want to do, and involve them in the co-creation. I think it's really a really good point, Andrew. So I'm really glad that's come out of the conversation. I think that's really, really important. Top stuff. Okay, let's move on to the site corner. Who was there and what's been happening?
Yeah, I can kick off there. So I suppose building on the quiz theme, one of the things that we went through was doing a Ronaldo versus Messi quiz. So half a dozen, 7 or 8 very simple questions, but that certainly got the boys bouncing around. Open it up at the end just around a conversation of, well, which one's a better player than? What do you think? And that certainly got them interacting, thinking about it. And then I suppose to throw a curveball into them to say, well, okay, then if one of them was dropped into midfield to play in midfield, who would be the better midfielder? So again, just putting a bit of a twist on that. I managed to have a short recording from one of our earlier sessions just before Christmas, so I just put that on for the boys to watch and said, here you go, this is you lot playing football for 5 minutes. And at the end of it, well, what did you think? What went well? Who was the star player from that? You know, just something that they can interact with, they can bounce around and get them going, get them thinking, get them talking.
I imagine they were quite engaged in that. Seeing themselves play must have been quite a good sort of focal point.
I said, I started off, and I kicked myself really, because I started off the Zoom call asking what they'd been up to. So after 5 minutes of silence, I then done the Messi and Ronaldo quiz, and that really got them going. And then when we went into the football, that was probably the one thing that really got them bouncing around and laughing and joking.
And I think, just to follow on from Michael, really, I think for me, one thing more than a specific strategy or activity was more that somehow we've got a role as a coach here to give the kids hope that this isn't going to last forever, this current situation, and they're going to get beyond it. And seeing glimpses of football and the future, I think, is really, really important, and giving some positive messages, you know, that we're looking forward to getting back together. Because you know, they're just, you know, the happiness is so important in this whole mix, isn't it? You know, and I think that hope thing, yeah, is really, really important.
No, I totally agree. I've written in my notes for tonight positive about 10 times, and I think that's on our shoulders, isn't it, to be positive. You know, we're probably feeling a bit down as well, but we can't let that kind of filter through to our players. We've got to be positive. We've got to have that hope, because you know, it's not happening forever. It's about, you know, say give them that hope and be positive about what's to come. And essentially what we're doing now is just supporting them to be better players and better people when they come out at the back end of this. And I think that's really, really important.
Dean, can I ask you mention something that I've found really has worked well with some of my lads, as well as focusing on some of the football aspects. Part of the evening I have with them each week is just having a fun time, and games that we've done. Some of you might have heard of a game called Among Us, and also there's another game called Scribble, and it's a time where they just all get together, have quite a laugh together. It's really good. I just leave them to it, but we've got 2 adults on the Zoom at the same time just watching, but having such a good laugh together playing these games just for about half an hour, and just the team spirit, which I really want to keep going at the moment to this difficult time. It has really helped a lot, but particularly those games Among Us and Scribble have been fantastic. Anyway, just my thoughts.
Thanks, Matt. I've just scribbled those down because I'm going to have a look at those. They sound awesome.
I see what you did there. I see what you did there, Dean.
Yeah, thanks, mate. That's 1-0 to me. Vinny, I see your hand up, buddy. Do you want to just chip in?
I was just about to say the same thing that Matthew said. So well done, Matthew. You've been far more creative than I have. We started last night with tell a joke, come on screen and tell a joke. So as we do with our practice sessions and our match days, we want the youngsters to have fun. And it's important that we keep that front and centre of our online delivery as well. It's got to be a fun time. It can't feel like a normal school lesson. I'm sure many of us are at home helping our youngsters with homeschool, and some of them, I used to be a teacher myself, so I'm not being critical, but some of them are as dull as dishwater, and therefore we need to help our youngsters to have fun when they're with us doing these online sessions. So well done, Matthew. I'm going to get amongst your stuff there with the Scribble as well. So boom, well done.
Cheers, Vin. Stu, I can see your hand up. Do you want to just chip in?
Yeah, sorry, just jumping on something I done with my boys at the weekend that you all might relate to. I've done it with my 14s and my 11s, and that was like a treasure hunt. So I went online with them all, and I had a list of 25 things, and it was a competition to see who can get those things on this list randomly first. So that whoever would come back first and held it in front of the screen like this got a point, and whoever got the most points gets the chocolate. So for example, it was like I said, go get a ball. They come out with a ball. Another thing was go get a glass of water. They come out with a glass of water and they said, now you've got to make somebody else in the house drink that water. So that brought other people into the house. And then next on the task was that ball you found, who can do the most keepy uppers? And then it was like go off you go and get a biscuit. It's got to come back whole. And some of the kids start eating the biscuit naturally. So I say, whoever's got a full biscuit, go take it to somebody else in the house. They have to eat it. Whoever eats it first wins the point, and you can just like build it up and build it up. I found that worked quite well with the team.
I love that. I'm smiling thinking about it. So yeah, that sounds like it'd be a lot of fun. It'd be really cool. Neil, do you want to share? Neil and I were just chatting in the main room. A lovely little social idea that he came up with, which for me, I'm definitely going to do this. I think it's a great little connection piece. Do you want to share it, Neil?
Of course, Dean, yeah. So conversation in our house has dried up, and I suspect a lot of people are probably feeling this, experiencing the same thing. So I really just wanted to get a conversation starter out there for the boys, talk to their family members. So last week's Zoom call I had with my team, they're under 15, really consisted of me of putting up a list of the top 50 most capped England players of all time, and then asking them, well, you know, can you come up with your best ever 11? And we talked about the shortcomings perhaps of that list, And I pose a question: how many of the current England team would perhaps get in that best 11? And then, more importantly, the point of it was go and ask your parents, and if you're lucky enough to have grandparents, go and talk to them and get their thoughts on that best 11 and get them to share stories with you. And all as the other guys have said, are they all going to take part in this task? It's a voluntary, optional task for them. But the feedback that I have had has been really positive, and a couple of the guys clearly had video calls or maybe recorded them, or they've at least transcribed some of the conversations with those grandparents, or forwarded on emails from those grandparents, and those insights into the thoughts of the grandparents about what makes a great player, and prompting some of the boys to go and look at these players on YouTube has been brilliant, and it's been a joy to read that feedback. So yeah, as always, it takes the kids to be engaged and go out and take part in the task, but I think it's one that has actually allowed some connections to happen, which is important.
No, it really is. I just really like the idea that the talking to grandparents. I'm sure lots of you have been getting your children to talk to their grandparents on Zoom calls, and sometimes it is quite hard to know what to talk about because not much is happening. So having that kind of focus in a conversation, I know my dad would love to talk to my youngest son, or both sons, but my youngest son particularly, around telling some stories from his football experiences and who he knows from his football life, and that's a really interesting thing to do, I think.
Yeah, and I stressed, Dean, that if the guys didn't have much affinity to the England national team, then if they got another team, a club team that their family have supported for generations, well, talk about that team. So yeah,
really nice connection. I thought really nice idea, really good stuff. Look, thanks guys, there's some fantastic ideas, as we knew there would be. Some stuff there definitely that we can take away and I'm sure use with our players. I've made some notes of stuff that I'm going to try and pick up, so thank you so much for your ability to share and your willingness to share.
Dean, have we got somebody with a hand up? I think, is it SS? Want to bring them in? Do they want to come in?
Was that Stuart from earlier? Is that legacy hand, or is
that a legacy hand?
I think my legacy hand went. I think
that's okay. Well, just making sure we haven't missed anyone out. Okay.
Never mind. There we go. Legacy hand. It's all right. No one panic. We're just going to share with you a few ideas. We've got myself, the two Waynes, so Wayne's World and Katie as well, to share just a little idea on what we've been doing with our players. As you already know, Alex has stolen my thunder on mine, but I will just whack it back up again, just so you can just see it, so you can see the sorts of things that we've been doing with our club, essentially. If I can get it working, that is. He says, I've been going to share his screen. Can you guys see my screen?
Not at the minute.
No, mate. Should we get someone to tell a joke while you're sorting it out, Dean?
If there's anyone, it's not you, Vinny.
Dean, do you want me to just share my? I'll see if I can share mine, Dean, while you're having a little look at yours.
Yeah, go for it, Wayne. Kick us off. Cheers, buddy.
This will be the point where mine doesn't share neither, and then we're completely screwed. Yeah, just let me see if I can share mine. Okay, so can we see that?
Yes, mate.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So Kahoot, for some people, will be fully aware of this as an application. It's a web app. It's a quiz platform basically, so used quite heavily in the education setting, but it's free to use as well for certain levels, and it allows you to set up your own quizzes. So something I had to go at a few weeks ago was to set up a quiz specifically for the team, so you can build it, put your own answers in, you can have up to 4 answers and so on. So it's quite intuitive, it's free, and it's just another way of doing things, certainly around the social corner. Although what I tried to do with this was to link it to some of the other corners, so the psychological and certainly the technical, tactical corner. just in terms of doing. Now, I'm not going to run this particular quiz, but I am going to do one at the end, just so people can kind of have a go. But just in terms of some of the questions, just quickly, we've been working on certain technical elements since the start of the season. So just for example, if I just bring up the answers to number 1. So we were just talking about who applies pressure when we don't have the ball. So we just spoke about it being the nearest player, and we've been working on some principles around that. Spoke about options for passing lanes. So where can you support your teammate? And that's just one of the phrases that I use a lot, is can you be in a passing lane? So again, just trying to relate it back to what we've been working on. Just a true or false. So very simple, basic stuff. When we need the ball, we need to. And again, I'll just put some different answers up. So obviously create space options by moving long and wide. So it was just really to get them thinking and reaching back to some of the program and some of the coaching sessions we'd already gone through. Little bit around kind of respect as well. So I put one in there about having coaches and spectators constantly shouting instructions. What does it do? It puts me off my game, and it was either true or false. So again, yeah, just really kind of 3 key moments in the game and what we'd worked on. So we'd worked on out of possession, a little bit on pressing and marking, a little bit for the goalkeeper as well. So we'd spoke to him about positioning himself higher up the pitch when the ball was in the opponent's half. And what was really good is all of the lads got that answer right. So even the forwards, although I've been working with the keeper on it, the forwards at the other end, they were also aware of what we're asking the goalkeeper to do. So it linked quite nicely. And then really by being higher, what does that allow him to do? So we then spoke about being able to deal with the opponents playing the ball in behind. So yeah, it was just kind of linking it all really to the England DNA and the technical components and the principles of play. Bit about what the main spectator's role was. So be supportive and applaud good play. What was interesting is they all got that right as well. So nobody put shout at the ref for making a mistake. I then just threw in a few general knowledge questions again, just to mix it up really. And you'll see them on the screen now. At the time, Liverpool were doing really well with my team, so I put a couple of Liverpool questions in there, but I'll probably take them out for the next version of the quiz. And then just really finished off with a couple more. So which one of these was an attacking technique? So again, I think most of them got it right. So it was just a nice way to reach back. And also I'd got them looking at the time, it was an England versus Ireland game. It was during the last lockdown in November. So I then got them to think about what formations that teams have played, and again put that in there. So that was just a little bit of an idea of what you can do with your players, and they really enjoyed that. And again, it probably hit 3 of the corners just by doing that quiz. So certainly the psychological, social, and the technical, tactical corner in terms of the nature of what was in there. So that's just an idea and something you might want to have a go at.
It's fair to say, Wayne, it's really easy to do, isn't it? To set a quiz up's actually quite straightforward. It's not a technically difficult thing to do, is it?
No, all you've got to do is log in with your email address and create quiz. You type in the question. You can type in, they can be true or false or multiple choice. So you can choose the nature of the questions, put the answers in. You can be creative with your answers as well. So yeah, very easy to use, free, and it's worth a go.
Cool.
Any questions on that?
Getting some love in the chat box, which is good, and I'd echo that. They are really good.
Moving on, go on, Dean. I'll let you crack on.
Well, my screen's not sharing, so I'll just you've seen the bingo card, you've seen the challenge card. Essentially, it's something that we've been doing with our players to try, if we can, to pick off all 4 corners in one go. We're a big club. We've got 65 coaches, I think, involved in the club, 28 teams. So we're a big club. To try and support that number is quite difficult. So by having this essential challenge card, that kind of worked really, really well. I will make sure that tomorrow when James sends his thank you for coming email, that you've got our version you can have a look at in the email, so you can kind of see the challenges. But just really trying to get something that goes across all 4 corners, and also importantly give some player involvement. So you would have noticed on the squares it was players' choice. So they had their choice is their own challenges. Will that be one they come up with, one they like to do again or make it harder? Talk to a parent or a sibling about what they could do for a challenge. Get them thinking about their own challenges and how they might set themselves some goals. Even 8, 9-year-olds can do that and think of how they might challenge themselves. So that's kind of worked really nicely with our players in our club. So that's just one idea, but I say James will share that with you tomorrow when he shares the thanks for coming email, so you can just have a look at the example. Mr. Campbell, the other Wayne from Wayne's World, would you mind just talking us through your physical corner idea?
Yeah, sure, no problem. Let me just flip over to there. Can you all see that?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I guess I'm very aware of a lot of the points that some of you guys have raised so far, but it still applies to the 2 teams I run. I run under 10s and 12s. What I tried to do just as we went into lockdown in January was to kind of give them some really basic things they can still do every day, or at least regularly. I say every day, that's not going to happen, we know that. And I've kind of split it into a fitness, and then at the bottom we've gone into they love the word techers, don't they? So we've gone for a football techers. And all I've tried to do is kind of give them what the exercise name is. They're familiar with a few of these already. But most importantly, particularly when I'm not there, when we're not there as coaches, is I've nicked some photos off Google to give people an idea of what we're looking for. So, for example, with the plank, so important for core stability, very importantly. But if you do it wrong, it can cause all sorts of problems, particularly for the older players and those going through growth spurts and other things as well. So we need to be conscious of that. The target in yellow is what I've kind of said. I run, as I say, the under 10s and the under 12s. So the under 10s might start here. The under 12s might start here. And the idea is I've given them some key things to remember that, to be fair, my boys are quite lucky with this, that we've focused on this for a while now. So just reminding them that technique is really important. It's so important from a physiological point of view that they get the position they're doing it in right. So I've kind of covered what they should feel when they're doing it as well. To link this into the social and psychological as well, the impact doing this sort of stuff will have on them, I find is very positive. I've got 2 boys in those age groups. I actually have a rule with them that if they haven't done their core work, they're not going on the Xbox. It only takes them 10 minutes to do this. Just to give you an idea, all these exercises here will only take 10, 15 minutes maximum. So I kind of say, if you don't do your exercise, you can't go on it. And I've never seen them so motivated to do something. So I know it's not for the fitness, I know it's for the Xbox. The press up bit, again, just looking at posture and what their target is to try and do when they do it, focusing on some key sort of points for them as well. And ultimately, for some of these, just check they're not doing it so fast. They're not actually getting the benefit necessarily from it. And all of these are football specific in terms of their core related, their shoulder related, their thigh related as well. We've got burpees in there. And also you'll see there's a progression point as well. So if they're finding that easy, which believe it or not, some of them in the 12s are, we just increase the progression piece. If they're finding it hard, well, we go back a step. And then we can kind of build through it. So the exercises I've kind of given them, pretty straightforward. They'll get a little bit of a sweat on doing it for sure. The squats, obviously, again, we've got a photo in there of what we're looking for. At the top tip, my 10-year-old said for the proper squat form, I was trying to explain it to him and he goes, Dad, so what you're saying is, imagine I'm trying to go for a poo. And I went, yes, that's exactly what you're trying to do. So, yeah, it's really important coming back to that technique piece. I know the aerobic work it's a bit of a hit and miss one. Some kids like going out on the bike, go for a walk, whatever it is. But for me, this is all about keeping it football specific. We don't do any running without a ball in training. Everything's with a ball. So even if we're running and go for a jog around our local football place, take a ball and do it. And try and get used to running with the ball again, because they're going to have lost that. And then in terms of the social side, I know we can't add friends into this bottom part here, but going out for a walk and bike ride with the family, it's getting them moving again. So that little session there is genuinely 10-15 minutes. And what I've kind of done is, I'll come on to in a second, is just show you how I've given them a chart they can stick on their fridges and they can just tick off every time they've done a session of it, just to try and motivate them. And then on the football technique side of things, I'm pretty sure we've covered a lot of these things already. but just keep a score of their best keepy-uppy record at the start. And all I've said at the start of January is, by February, I'm expecting you to do more than that. Not giving them a total, but just saying, have a go. Have a go with just your left foot, just your right foot. I've put some things in for those kids who are going to just play in the garden next to a window, so don't get any insurance claims going in. But it's all about the touch, the technique, the control. We all know as coaches and players, it's one of the first things that will start going it once they stop doing it. So for me, it was really, really important that they just carried on and tried to do something. So, you know, this bottom section here can just be, go out with your parents, go out with your brother. You know, if we can do some of it on your own, great, go in the garden or the park and do it on your own. But the idea is we're just going to keep the muscles moving, keep them as strong as we possibly can right now, because we know that, you know, some people are doing it. And what we've tried to do to, if I just flip that over, can you see that training planner?
Yep.
Yeah, so what we try to do basically is we've listed all those items I've just said down this side, and then really simply print this out and put a little 1 next to it every time you've done one. And all I've said to the guys is, can you try and do 2 things a week? You know, so some people are doing more. And actually what we've done within the parents groups is I've asked them to share photos and videos within the parents of the kids doing stuff. And I've been quite surprised actually that the uptake's been reasonably good. Particularly in the 12s age group is probably more so, where I'd say about 60, maybe 70% of them are doing something, and I'm getting videos of things coming through and photos. For the under 10s, it's probably about 50% of them are taking part in it. And I know it's not ideal because we're looking at things that they have to go and do when it's quite cold, but actually over the time, by the time we actually get back to training, whenever that is, we've at least given them something to try and kind of focus on. So yeah, just to summarize, it was just split into a very brief fitness session, which are dead easy with progression points or regression points, depending on how they're getting on. And then the techers bit is, you know, the fun bit. So I guess it's over to you guys if there's any questions about any of it, really.
Wayne, something cropped up in the psychological room when we were talking earlier. One of the guys actually said that he dropped off a ball and a few cones to one of his players. So that was a really kind of thing that got me thinking that, you know, we just assume that all of your players will have a ball and some equipment that they can use. So that's just something to be mindful of, I think. Yeah, I'm sure we've all got hundreds of cones in our cars and garages, haven't we? So we got enough of those to go around as well.
Yeah, I set some challenges for my 16s. I couldn't believe 3 of them didn't have a football. I just couldn't believe that was the case, but it was. So I had to get my son to go and do some delivery of footballs to people's houses here in Buckingham last week, which is quite interesting. Brilliant. Cool. There's some great stuff there, Wayne. Are you happy to share that through James? Is that okay?
Yeah, by all means. I'll send it as a Word document as well. So if you guys want to amend it, change it. The one thing just I will say on that, I did actually suggest to some of our parents that they have a go at doing some of them as well, to keep them active as well. But I have told them before anyone starts it, to contact me and just, you know, just from a risk point of view, we don't want some parent who's 25 stone trying to do burpees and having a heart attack. So we've just got to be a little bit careful if you try and get parents involved in this. The kids will be fine. All those exercises are dead easy. Well, they're not easy for kids actually, but again, motivate them with the Xbox. I say 1 mile on the exercise bike we've got in our garage. That gives them an hour of Xbox time. So they'll do 2 or 3 miles on the bike.
Yeah, absolutely great stuff. Cheers for sharing that, Wayne.
No problem.
Good stuff. Katie, I think we've given you, an hour and a half to get your head around this. You're the big finish for the session.
No, no pressure at all.
No pressure at all. What have you got for us?
So I think it's really useful, and actually that last motivation comment was a nice segue into what I've got to show you today. So initially I was asked to kind of go through some of the ideas of what we've been doing in my club context at the moment. But before I delve into that, we've talked a lot today about the motivation theme. And the one thing that I did prior to the November lockdown was actually think about my motivation as a coach. So question why do I need to engage with the players? Why do I want to engage with the players? and keep things ticking over during the lockdown periods. Now, for me, I'm an adult in a position to set an environment for young people to navigate a global pandemic. So you'll notice there was no football in that statement at all. And for me, that's what this all kind of boils down to. If I get some football gains out of it as well, then that's a bonus. The other aspect we've talked about a lot in the call is about whether players want to access or not. And I think the whole virtual scene really amplifies all of those individual differences that we have to consider in our normal delivery anyway. So with all of the stuff that we've been doing, we've used the term kind of encourage, not enforce. So nobody's obliged to access this, but if it can help the girls that want to access it, then I'll continue putting on the sessions for them as we go through. Now, in terms of the uptake, we've been quite fortunate. So the players we've got pretty decent attendances even now, having gone through November, and also I'll move on the slide in a second, talk a little bit about how we're doing things differently this time round. But all the motivation factors, again, that we would use in a physical session that we've got on the grass are all the sorts of levers that we've been pulling to make sure that these are engaging and, you know, ultimately fun for the players. So we've talked through a lot of examples, and a number of them are repeated on the slides that I've got here, about giving the players ownership. Prior to entering November lockdown, I asked the girls, what do they want to do? Do they want to keep the routines or want to keep the consistency? The answer was yes, which is why you can see my context is under 14s, and we train 3 times a week. That's 19 girls, and I think we've got 16 different schools. So they would never see each other, and those friendship groups wouldn't exist, just be taken away for the whole of November if we weren't bringing them back together. So this is what they wanted to do, and we covered a variety of topics in doing it. The other aspect that a load of you have mentioned as well is including a competition element. So that's been big for quite a number of the topics that we've covered, to have a bit of competition amongst the players, and then also bringing in some role models. So, you know, in my club context, the first team are accessible and they're role models for the girls that we've got in the younger squads. So for some of the challenges, it might have been like a keepy up challenge that was mentioned earlier. We've had videos of the first team players doing those challenges and then setting the girls, you know, the opportunity to beat them. You'd be surprised in terms of the lengths that under 10s would go to beat a first team player. So that's been great. And then I think also giving them the creative license as well. So if I move the slide on in a second, this month, all of our sessions are entirely player owned. So they love a breakout room in our group. So we've given them the task in the end of January to come up with their own sessions to deliver back to the group in February, and that's working really nicely at the moment. Physical side, we've already touched on it, but in terms of bringing that kind of psychological, social aspect to it, you'll see here this was a presentation that was sent to the parents. Not everything that we work on through our syllabus has been physical related. We've had a kind of like we had a charity. It was called Miles for Smiles, and any way in which players wanted to move miles and raise a bit of money for charity in doing that, we had a club competition kind of running throughout first team all the way down to under 10s as well. So that's been useful for the physical side of it, which allowed us more time to cover other sorts of topics. Now, some of the kind of like call out topics that we've got in here is we had a nutrition workshop, which was relevant because the girls were asking about it beforehand. And we then had a kind of cooking competition as well. And similar to what's been said before, we have parents WhatsApp groups. So that feedback mechanism is a great way to motivate not just the players, but also I know some of the guys in the breakout rooms were saying quite often the parents are the keys to the players. So you won't necessarily get access to the players, and quite rightly so. But how do you encourage parents to realise that, well, actually, some of the other team are engaging with these things. Maybe that's something I want to make sure that my child's doing as well. Involving the family has been good. So we've had some quiz nights and things like that. Using your network. Don't feel like it's all on your own. So our physical prep workshop. There's a guy I know from many moons ago on my level 2 who's now working within the England setup, and he came and did a physical prep workshop with the girls, which they enjoyed. And then again, relevant to their context, some of the others of you as well have already done match analysis. And we're lucky enough to have some of our games filmed, so that's been of their own games, or we've looked at some training sessions and just had kind of group conversations and things around that. We did also play Among Us, which was the first the first question the girls asked if they could include. So that was the just for fun bit, but we've had several games since. So current lockdown, we've not got the same routine in terms of the 3 times a week. A, the weather you've touched on. B, the girls are now on screens for school, and so you can really kind of tell that. We've also changed the flavour of kind of what we're doing more towards, you don't need to look at your screen, but let's engage in these physical activities because of that as well, to keep the motivation up. The girls themselves feedback after every session as to whether it's what they want, whether they want to make any tweaks to what we're doing. And we give them plenty of time in the breakout rooms as well, because they seem to love it. I've said directly to the girls, if they spend 90% of that time in that breakout room having a chat with their mates and 10% in terms of coming up for the answers to feedback with the group, I'm happy. I've achieved my objective in terms of why I'm doing what I'm doing. So that's my kind of gambit in terms of making sure that we keep motivations high for those that want to access it, but also, like I said, from a coach context, you will always have some that don't, and you'll also have to alter medium a little bit in terms of how you target the different age groups. But there's so many things that you can kind of signpost people to, and so many feedback mechanisms and mediums that we can use nowadays, that we should be able to create that environment for those that want to access it.
That's wicked. Thanks, Katie, for that. That's really, really good stuff. What's the 20+1 game?
So that was actually a game I picked up at university, except rather than anything else being involved, if you kind of got the rules wrong, we ended up doing a fitness challenge instead of a different kind of challenge that we don't need to talk about on the recording.
Game of 21s, I get you. I'm with you.
Yep,
I know what you mean. Yeah, all good stuff. Cheers for that, Katie. Some really lovely ideas. I love that idea of the parents being the gateway to the players. A really nice way of articulating that, and using that WhatsApp communication. I think is really, really powerful, and keeping that communication between them actually going is also really important, isn't it? I think in this lockdown.